Hello viewers, welcome to K Diagnostics, Dio here. Today we have a 2006 Honda Odyssey. The customer complaint on this vehicle is that the sliding door is very difficult to close. The customer stated that once she opens the door slides all the way to the back, and then once it gets to the back of the vehicle, it's really hard to get the door to close. So basically closing this door is really hard. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to confirm the customer's complaint. After confirming the customer's complaint, then we will talk about what we're going to do so we can fix this sliding door that doesn't close. So basically the way this door works is once you pull the handle outward, the door opens on its own. So it opens and it slides all the way to the back of the vehicle. And once it gets to the back, it allows passengers to enter the passenger compartment. And once the driver decides to close the door, you pull the handle outward again, and then the door slides shut. Okay, so now we're gonna confirm the customer's complaint. I'm gonna pull the handle out so that the door can open. So let's see if it's gonna open when we pull the handle out. So right there, the door couldn't open. It tried to open and then it shut back up. So let's try that one more time. So right here, it finally opened. I had to pull the handle a little bit harder. So now let's try to close it. Basically, once I pull the handle out, it's supposed to close on its own. Let's see what happens. And as you can see, it tried to go, but it didn't. Let's try that one more time. So basically at this point, the door is really difficult to close. So the customer even told me that at some point she had to leave the door open because she went to the grocery store and she couldn't get the door to close. So she just left it open and went and did all her shopping, hoping that nobody was gonna get into her car. That's no bueno. So we're gonna figure out what's going on with this door so we can fix it. Let's try this one more time. So as you can see, at this point it is difficult to close this door. So I'm gonna try to lift it, or let's try to wiggle the door while trying to close it. Let's see if we can get it to close now. Okay, I don't know if you saw what I did. I lifted the back of the door a little bit and pulled the handle and the door closed. So by what I did, I can already tell what's going on with this vehicle. I can already tell what the problem is. I'm gonna walk you through the steps of how to diagnose this if you're experiencing the same symptoms with your car. So basically what I did, I lifted the back of the sliding door and the door was able to slide. So it looks like this center roller, there's a roller here that supports the back of the door. It looks like the roller here are worn out. But one thing I also want you to do before you check the roller is you want to check the rail, the bottom rail and the upper rail. So the other thing that I see here in the shop is sometimes people get pencils and crayons jammed up in this bottom rail. So if you have stuff jammed up here, that can also prevent your sliding door from closing. So the first thing we're gonna do is, although I believe that the issue is the center roller here, let's double check these rails, especially the lower rail. Let's make sure that this rail doesn't have anything on it, and then we will inspect the center rail. So I'll bring you guys over here so that we can make sure that there isn't anything jammed up in this lower rail. Alright, so we're gonna inspect the bottom rail of this sliding door. So as you can see, the lower rail looks good. I don't see any dirt. So this roller here looks good. Okay, so there isn't any stuff jammed up over here. So what I usually see is sometimes I see pencils and crayons get jammed up here. So if your door doesn't close, make sure you check this lower rail and make sure the lower rail is free and there isn't anything stuck under here. Okay, so that's good. So now let's check the upper rail. The other thing you can also do is you can kind of try to like rock this back and forth. This play here is normal. What you don't want to see is such a wobbly play, because these rollers here sometimes wear out, and this play here is normal. So this is good. Okay, so the rollers on the bottom rail here are good to go. So now let's check the upper rail. So here is the upper rail, and you know, stuff don't really jam up here, but it's always good to check this roller also. And as you can see, this is solid, so that's good to go. So now what we need to do is we have to check the center roller. So there's one roller over there, another one up here. So lower roller, upper roller, and then there's a center roller over here. Alright guys, so we have tested the lower roller and the upper roller of the sliding door. They are both good to go. They don't have any excessive play on them, so they're good. So now we're gonna test the center roller of the sliding door. So you test the center roller of the sliding door by opening the door either halfway or all the way. So once you open your door, what you need to do is you have to grab the back of the door and try to rock the door back and forth. So try to rock the door inside and out. So try to go in and out, and you shouldn't have any excessive play on the door. So let's do that and see what happens. I don't know if you can hear that, but there's definitely excessive play on the center roller. So I hope you can see that. So this is definitely abnormal. The center roller here is worn out. So this is what's causing the door to jam up. So the roller here is jamming on the rail, so that's why the door is not closing on its own. So I'm gonna bring you guys over here so I can show you a closer look of this center roller. Alright, so let's see what we got over here. We're gonna inspect this center roller. So here is our roller. So I hope you can see that right there. So just focus on this little arm, okay? So this roller here has two rollers on it, and I believe those two rollers are worn out. So I'm gonna rock the door in and out, and we shouldn't have excessive play on this arm. So just watch. You see that? So this is definitely abnormal, guys. I hope you can see that right there. You see that arm? You see all this travel? So this is abnormal. So basically what's happening here is that this arm is jamming up on the rail, so it's holding the door back, okay? So it's creating excessive resistance. That's why the door is not closing on its own. So what we need to do, just watch this one more time. So what we need to do is we have to replace this center roller. Once we replace this piece, this door will be fixed. So now what we need to do is we have to get this roller replaced. So I will show you what we have to do so that we can get this center roller replaced. Alright guys, I did manage to close the door off camera. So now I'm going to show you what we have to do so that we can get the center roller of this sliding door replaced. So to get access to the center roller of this sliding door, we have to remove this plastic panel. This plastic panel here is what covers the back rail of the sliding door. So there's a rail here where the center roller rides into. So we're gonna have to remove this plastic panel so that we can get access to the center roller. So in order to remove this plastic panel, we're gonna have to remove the tail light. This tail light has to come out. There's one 10mm bolt behind the tail light that holds this plastic panel down, and then there's another screw. There's a Phillips screw on this side of this plastic panel that holds the other side of the plastic panel. So what we have to do is we're gonna start here in the back. You don't have to start in the back, you can start from the front or the back. I just prefer to start back here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna open up the trunk. So we got this opened, and now what we need to do is we're gonna have to remove this tail light. Once we get this tail light out of the way, then we will have access to the 10mm bolt that holds this plastic panel down. So I'll bring you guys over here so that we can remove this tail light. Alright, so in order to remove this tail light, what we have to do is we have to remove these two plastic covers that cover the bolts that hold the tail light down. So we're gonna use a flat screwdriver to remove these covers. So you get your screwdriver in and then pry up. So the first one is removed. We're gonna remove the second one. So right there. And these are 8mm bolts. So you can either use a 8mm socket, or you could also use a Phillips head screwdriver. So I'm gonna use a 8mm socket to remove these bolts. So here comes the first one. Now we're gonna remove the second one. So here's the second bolt. We're gonna get it out of the way. So at this point, our tail light should be able to come out. So we have removed those two bolts that hold the tail light down. So the tail light is now moving, but the tail light can't come out. Why? Well, the tail light can't come out because there is a plastic tab or a plastic rivet here that holds it against the body. So what we need to do is we're gonna use this trim remover to pry the tail light out. Ideally, you wanna use a plastic trim remover, but I don't see mine, so I don't know where it went. So what we need to do is we just have to pry this out. So right there, just pry your tail light out, and here comes the tail light. Okay, I'm gonna disconnect these light bulbs. So right there, and we can remove the tail light. So the tail light is removed. So now we're gonna remove this 10mm bolt that holds this plastic panel down. So we're gonna remove this bolt. So as you can see, this bolt that holds this panel is removed. So now we're gonna have to go back in front of this panel so that we can remove the Phillips screw that holds the front of this plastic panel. So now what we need to do is, actually this panel is not plastic, it's metal. So now what we need to do is we have to go to the other side of this panel and remove the plastic screw that holds the other side of it. So now let's go to the front of this panel. We got the bolt on the panel here removed. So now we're gonna remove the screw that holds the front of the panel. So what I need to do at this point is I'm gonna turn the key to the on position and lower the window. I wanna lower the window halfway because I don't want the door to go all the way to the back. We're gonna need a little bit of room between the door and the panel so that we can remove it. So I'm gonna turn the key on first, and I'll tell you why I'm doing this. So let's turn the key on, and then I will lower the window. So basically, with the window lowered, the door is not going to slide all the way to the back. We just want the door to slide halfway so that we can have enough room between the door and the panel to get the panel out. So let's open this door. So right there, the door is now going to go all the way to the back. So this is what we want. Now that we have the door halfway, it gives us enough room between the door and the panel here. So once we remove the screw on the other side, this will give us enough room to get this panel out. Okay, so now let's go to the other side of the panel and remove that Phillips screw. Alright, so we are right here in front of this panel. I hope you can see that Phillips screw over there. So that screw is what we're gonna remove. And that little Phillips screw is what holds the front of that panel. So we're gonna use a long screwdriver and remove that. So I will use this screwdriver here. So I'm gonna remove it. Okay, I'll go grab a magnet and remove that screw. So here it comes. Okay, so here's the screw. Okay, so we got the screw removed. That's good. So now let's go back to the back of the sliding door so that we can remove this panel. Alright, so now I'm gonna remove this panel. So you remove this panel by pushing it forward and then taking it out. So here comes the panel. So basically what I did was I pushed it forward and then out. Okay, so, and it has these openings here that hooks onto little plastic tabs over here. I will bring you guys over here so I can show you these plastic tabs. So here are the tabs that hold the cover that covers the rail for the center roller. So on this panel, there are openings where these plastic tabs go onto. So this tab over here goes onto this, and then when you push it backward, so they slide in and hold. I got this out and then I push. So you have to push forward and out. And then to put it back on, you have to push backwards to get these plastic tabs to slide and lock. Okay, so now what we need to do is we have to replace the center roller. So here is our center roller. I don't know if you can see in there, but the rollers are completely worn out. The rollers are not even there anymore. So this piece is not centered anymore. It's at an angle, so it's kind of cocked. So it's getting jammed on the rail. So that's why the door is not closing on its own. Okay, so we have to replace this piece. We have to take it out so we can replace it. So in order to remove this piece, we're gonna have to undo these two bolts. There's one over here, another one on the bottom. These are 12mm bolt. And once we take these bolts out, we're gonna remove these cables. These cables are really easy to remove. They are just like parking brake cables. So we're gonna have to twist and then pull these cables out. Okay, but before we remove these two bolts, we're gonna have to mark this piece. We have to mark it to the door because this piece has to be installed the exact way it's gonna come out. So we have to make sure we return it the same way it comes out. That way the door will work well. So if you don't get this aligned, if this thing is not lined up, the door may not work well after you put everything back together. So make sure you mark this. I will get some paint here so we can mark this piece and the door. Actually, before we remove these two bolts, we're gonna have to use a jack and lift the sliding door a little bit so we can get the weight of this center roller. So I will get a jack so we can lift this sliding door a little bit, and then we will remove these two bolts. We're gonna mark it first before we remove the bolts. So let's do that now. I'm gonna put a piece of wood between the jack and the sliding door. So now I'm gonna jack this up just a little bit. So just enough to get the weight of the center roller. Alright, so we got the sliding door supported by the jack. So now we're gonna mark our center roller. So what we need to do is we have to put a mark over here between this roller and the door. So I'm just gonna put a mark right there. I hope you can see that. So there's our mark. I have a mark on this piece and then another mark on the door. So we're gonna have to reuse this piece. So that's why I put a mark on it and then another mark over here. So once we get this mark lined up, everything should be fine. So now let's undo those two 12mm bolts. Okay, here's the first one. We're gonna remove the second one. So here comes the second bolt, so right over here. So right there is our center roller. So what we need to do is, let's pry the door out a little bit. So right there, that's good. So look at that. So at this point, what we have to do is, let's see if we can pry this out. So here it is. Check this out, guys. You see that? This is completely missing. And right over here, so there's one roller here, and there isn't any on this one. And if you look closely here, you see where it was grinding from? So you see right there? So this over here was grinding on the rail, so right over here. That's why the door was getting jammed, because this thing, instead of going straight, it was being cocked this way. So it was going at an angle. That's why the door couldn't lock on its own. You see how it's like ground off over there? All right, so that's good. So now we're gonna disconnect the cables. So we're gonna disconnect the cable, and then we will remove this piece, and we're gonna install a new one. So now let's get these cables detached. So basically the way you detach this cable is by pulling out on the center roller, and then so you just twist the cable, and then it comes out. So right there, there's a little bit of tension on the cable, so you gotta be careful. So the other one just comes out really easily. So basically what I did was, let me show you this. So the cable goes in here, so it goes straight in and then twist. So kind of like this, okay? So this is how the cable goes. So straight like this, and then you twist. So you push it down, and then you twist. So this is how it goes, and then it goes this way. There's a slide over here on this piece. So what it does is it goes in this way, and then it slides in. And you turn it, and right there. Okay, so this is how you install the cable. So when we put the new one on, we're gonna start by installing the cable on this side first, and then this cable that comes from the back will go in last. And with the tension, we're gonna have to fight it in a little bit. Okay, because it has a lot of tension on it. So, I mean, not a lot, but a little bit of tension. So we're gonna have to fight it to get it in. Okay, so now let's go to the bench and get this. Basically, we're gonna get this piece swapped onto the new roller. So we're gonna have to get this piece swapped on the new roller, and then we will install it. And as you can see right there, this roller is there, but this one is not. And this is where it was grinding from. Okay, so this here is definitely bad. So this was causing the problem. This is what was causing the door to not close on its own. So now let's go to the bench, and I'll show you the new one. And here is the part number for the new center roller. So right here is the Honda part number, genuine Honda parts. So that's good. So now we're gonna prep the new center roller. So we're gonna get the new one out of the bag. So here's the new center roller. I hope you can tell the difference. You see how this one has got a missing roller, and this one has got two rollers. Nice. All right, so what we need to do here is we have to remove this piece and install it on this new roller. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna remove this little C clip over here. So this little C-clip has to come out. Now as you're removing this, you have to be careful not to lose it. So here comes our tiny little C-clip. So we're just gonna put it over here. So now this pin over here just comes out. So we're just gonna tap it out. So this pin has got splines on the other end of it. I hope you can see it right there. So it has splines right there. So once you tap it out, and then it just slides in. So this pin sometimes gets rusty. If this pin is rusty, you have to make sure you clean it up with a wire brush. You have to make sure you clean all the rust out of this pin before you install it. I mean, this one looks pretty good, so I'm not gonna clean it. I'll just put a little bit of grease on it before I install it. So here's the bad one. We're gonna put this out of the way. So now we're gonna install this. So this is gonna go this way. And we're gonna apply a little bit of grease on this pin. I mean, there's no need to clean it because it's not really looking rusty. So we're gonna line this up. So we're gonna tap this. So right there. So you have to make sure that this hinge is moving in and out easily, okay? You don't want this to bind. As you can see, this is moving freely, so that's good. So now we're gonna install our C-clip. So you have to make sure the C-clip is on its groove, and then let's press it in. So right there. So this is good. You don't have to lube these rollers because they already come pre-lubed. I don't know if you can see, but they're already lubricated from the factory. So you don't have to put any lube on these rollers. So we are good to go. So now let's go back to the vehicle and install this center roller. Alright, so now we're gonna install this center roller. So we're gonna have to start by hooking up this cable first. So you have to make sure that this cable is lined up on the rail. So once you get the cable lined up, we're gonna install this by pushing this side in first and making sure this is straight, and then twist. So right there, this side is on. So now we're gonna install this side. So we have to fight this side in a little bit. So we gotta push it in. So basically, I'm pushing it in. I'll push it in and then twist. And there's a little bit of tension here, so this is not gonna be pretty easy. So let's see. So I got the other cable on. I used these needle nose pliers to twist the cable. So basically I pulled on one side, and then you grab the cable with your needle nose pliers, and then you just make sure it's lined up on that slot. And then once it's lined up, and then you twist. Okay, so there's a little bit of tension on the cables, but once you use a needle nose pliers, you should be able to install this other cable. Okay, so we got both cables installed. So now we can install our center roller on the rail. So we just gotta push it back a little bit. Well, forward. We just have to push it forward and then slide this side in, and right there. Now, as you can see here, this cable is not on this little plastic guide. So this is no bueno. So what we have to do is we have to make sure that this cable is sliding on the guide. Okay, so you have to make sure it's on this little plastic piece over here. So this is good. And as you can see, this is not cocked anymore. It's centered. So now we're gonna push the door towards the vehicle so that we can install this center roller on the door. So let's push this forward. Okay, so we're gonna get everything lined up, and then we will install the bolt. Alright, so now we're gonna bolt this center roller on the door. So we're gonna install these two 12mm bolts. They are both the same length, so it doesn't really matter which one goes where. And remember this mark that we made here, so we have to make sure that our mark is lined up. So now let's put the bolt on. So right there. The first one is going on easily. So now we're gonna put the second one, making sure that our mark is lined up. So it looks like everything is lined up, everything looks good. So right there. So we have to make sure you see it. So that's why you want to mark this, because you don't want to have this going in all over the place. Okay, so we want to make sure that this is lined up with the mark. So that's good, this is lined up. So now we're going to tighten these two bolts. So we're going to double check our mark and make sure our mark is lined up. And right there, as you can see, our mark is lined up. So now we're going to tighten these bolts and then we'll try out our repair. Alright, so I tightened these two bolts. So now before we put everything back together, we're going to try it out and see if the door will now close on its own. Alright, so I'm going to remove the jack. Alright, so before we put everything back together, we're going to test our repair. Remember, when we open the door will go all the way to the back and then it will get stuck. It wouldn't close on its own. So we have determined that the issue was the center roller. We replaced the center roller, so now everything should work fine. So now I'm going to close the door. Once I pull the handle, the door should close on its own. And then once I pull it again, it should open all the way. And once I pull it out for the third time, it should close on its own. So now let's see what happens. So right there. What do you guys think? Let's try that one more time. So right there, the door just opened. So the door is not going all the way to the back because the window is down. When you have the window down, the door is not going to go all the way to the back. So now I'm going to roll up the window so that we can have the door to go all the way to the back and see. So now let's roll up the window. So now let's try that again. That's good. This is fixed, guys. So as you can see, the door is no longer sticking. Once we pull the handle, it goes all the way, and you pull the handle once again, the door closes on its own. So this is fixed. So now I feel comfortable putting everything back together. So now let's lower the window one more time. I'm lowering the window so that the door doesn't go all the way to the back. Alright, so everything looks good. The door opens and closes fine. So now we're going to install this panel. So this is going to slide in there. And then we're going to slide it back. Okay? So you have to make sure you just get it lined up and then you slide it back. So this hole over here for this little 10mm bolt is lined up. So I'm going to install this 10mm bolt. So this bolt is on. So now before I tighten this, I'm going to go back on the other side of this panel and install that little Phillips screw that we removed. So we're going to tighten that first and then we'll come back here and tighten this one. Alright, so now we're going to install the tiny Phillips screw that goes over there. So let's get that installed. Alright, so that's tight. So right there, that Phillips screw is installed. So now let's go back to the back of the vehicle and tighten that 10mm bolt, and then we will install the tail light. Alright, so this is tightened. So now we can install our tail light. Here comes our tail light. So our tail light has a little plastic tab, or little plastic rivet, however you want to call it, that holds it, that holds this side against the body. Okay, this piece here goes into this little plastic thing. Okay, so now I'm gonna connect the electrical connectors. So we're gonna connect these wires over here. So this is connected. So now we're gonna line this up. We gotta make sure everything is lined up here. So right here, our tail light is installed. So now we're gonna put the two 8mm bolts that hold the tail light down. All right, so now we're gonna install these 8mm bolts. All right, so they're tight. So now we're gonna reinstall these plastic covers. So right there. So right there, the tail light is installed and bolted down. So now let's close the tailgate. Alright, so I closed the tailgate. Everything is back together. So now let's try this one more time before we wrap up this video. So I'm just double checking and making sure that everything is back on. So that's good. So the door is closed. So the door is open all the way, so let's close it. So that's good. Remember before, the door wasn't able to close by itself. So as soon as it opened, it wouldn't close because it was getting stuck on the rail. So this is good. This is fixed, guys. This here is fixed. I feel comfortable with this. I feel comfortable delivering this to the customer. So right there, as you can see, this is fixed. The door is now opening and closing on its own. Remember before, the door couldn't open and it couldn't close on its own. So this is fixed, guys. This sliding door is fixed. I'm gonna leave it right over here. The issue was a defective center roller. Remember when we checked it, there was excessive play on the back of the door. We removed the center roller. We saw that one roller was missing. So the old roller was getting jammed on the rail. So that's why the door couldn't close on its own. So I will leave it right over here, guys. I hope you like this video. If you do like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, give it a thumb down. But if you do give it a thumb down, you have to tell me why so that we can make better videos in the future. If this is your first time here, subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell so that you can get notified every time I upload a new video. If you have any comments, questions, criticism, leave them in the comment box. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.